The galaxy had forgotten what peace felt like. For centuries, countless star systems had burned under the same cruel flag, the banner of the Zither Dominion. Their fleets were endless, their weapons unforgiving, and their rule absolute. Planet after planet fell. No one dared to stand against them anymore. Even the bravest voices were silenced. They came like storms, sudden, overwhelming, and merciless. One day you would see your sky filled with stars. The next, those stars would be their warships. They didn't come to talk. They came to take. Whole worlds were stripped of life and cities turned into dust. If you were lucky, you were taken as a worker. If not, your home became another lifeless sphere in their growing empire. At first, people tried to fight back. Dozens of smaller species formed alliances, promising to protect one another. But the Dominion crushed them all. Their technology was centuries ahead. Their soldiers didn't hesitate. Even when thousands stood together, it wasn't enough. Within a few decades, every resistance had fallen. In the dark corners of space, stories began to fade. Stories of old worlds, ancient heroes, and one name no one dared to say aloud anymore: humans. Most believed humans were a myth, a race that once existed long ago before the Dominion rose to power. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others said they left the galaxy and never returned. Whatever the truth was, no one really knew. But in old archives and abandoned libraries, there were whispers that once humanity ruled the stars. It was said that humans were fierce, creative, and impossible to control. That they built machines so powerful that even the Dominion feared them. But those were only tales told to children in forgotten colonies, bedtime stories, to make them believe in heroes that never came. The galaxy had stopped hoping. A long time ago, across the trade routes and war-torn systems, life became survival. People learned not to look up when Dominion ships passed overhead. They learned not to ask questions, not to dream of freedom, and never to mention the past, because the past was dangerous. Hope was dangerous. In the Outer Rim, where even the Dominion rarely bothered to go, a small mining colony floated around a dim, dying star. It was a forgotten place, filled with broken machines and tired people who just wanted to make it through another day. The miners worked deep inside the asteroid fields, digging for resources that weren't even worth much anymore. Every now and then, a Dominion patrol would appear, checking for rebellion, reminding the workers who ruled them. But no one fought back. Not anymore. The last attempt at rebellion there ended years ago, and all that was left were old stories and older scars. One evening, as the colony drifted through its silent routine, a young worker noticed something strange. In the communication tower, a weak signal flickered on the monitor, barely noticeable, almost like background noise. The man thought it was just interference from a nearby asteroid, but the pattern repeated again and again. It wasn't random. The worker called his supervisor, who looked at the screen with tired eyes. "Just static," the older man said, brushing it off. But the younger one wasn't convinced. There was a rhythm to it, faint, steady, like a heartbeat from deep space. After the shift ended, he stayed behind and started recording it. The signal repeated every few minutes, always in the same sequence. He sent it to the local archives, where an old communications specialist took a look. When she opened the file, she froze. The pattern looked familiar, something she hadn't seen in her entire lifetime, but something she had read about in the oldest human records. The frequency, the pulse, it matched ancient Earth transmission codes. Her hands trembled as she tried to decode it. Most of the data was corrupted, but a few symbols came through. They weren't words, but coordinates. And below them, in fading digital text, one line appeared over and over: human distress signal, priority 1. The woman leaned back in her chair, staring at the message. "That's impossible," she whispered. Humanity was gone. Everyone knew that. The Dominion had erased them from existence long before her ancestors were even born. She tried sending the data through the main network, but the Dominion scanners would intercept it in seconds. If they saw the words human distress signal, they would come, and they would destroy the colony to keep it quiet. So she made a choice. Quietly, she transferred the recording onto an old, disconnected system, a relic no one used anymore, and began decoding the coordinates by hand. Days passed. The mining colony went on as usual, but she barely slept. She cross-checked star charts, old maps, and forbidden archives. Every clue pointed to one place, a system so deep in the void that no traveler ever returned from it. It was listed as dead space, an area sealed off after the Great Collapse thousands of years ago. No one knew why it had been restricted. Some said there were black holes there. Others believed something terrible had happened. A weapon, a war, or maybe something far worse. But now that dead system was calling, and the call was human. When she finally confirmed the coordinates, she didn't tell anyone. Instead, she sent the data to a group of explorers she trusted, people who worked on forgotten trade routes outside Dominion control. "Don't ask how I found this," she said. "Just go there. And whatever you find, don't tell the Dominion." The explorers hesitated. They didn't believe in old human stories. But curiosity was stronger than fear. Within a few cycles, they prepared a small ship, loaded supplies, and left quietly into the void. No one expected them to return. Weeks turned into months. The woman who found the signal waited every day, checking her monitors for any reply. Nothing came. She began to wonder if they had disappeared, like everyone who entered that dark system before them. But one night, as she sat half asleep beside her console, her screen flickered again. A new signal appeared, strong, clear, and carrying a message that froze her blood. "This is the Battleship Sol Invictus. Human origin, systems rebooting. Awaiting command." She stared at the message for a long time. Her heart pounded. Humanity, it was real. Their ship still existed, and one of them was waking up. She didn't know it yet. But that moment, that tiny signal, would change the galaxy forever. Because somewhere out there, beyond the silence and the stars, a sleeping giant was opening its eyes again, and the galaxy that had forgotten humanity was about to remember. The explorers who received the message didn't know what they were walking into. When they first heard the coordinates, they thought it was just another ghost story, another rumor about ancient human ruins floating somewhere in the void. But there was something about the signal, something that felt different. It wasn't like the random background noise that most old satellites sent. It had structure. It had intent, so a small team decided to follow it. Their ship was old and patched together from different systems, built more for transport than exploration. But they didn't care. They were used to danger. Most of them had spent their lives traveling the edges of known space, smuggling, salvaging, or running from the Dominion whenever it came too close. They didn't believe in legends, but they believed in opportunities. And this one felt like something worth risking everything for. When they left the last known trade route behind, the stars began to change. The navigation system struggled to read the area. Radiation spikes came and went. Even the ship's computer warned them to turn back. But they pushed on. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became. No signals, no traffic, no signs of life. It was as if they were crossing into a graveyard of stars. Then, after weeks of travel, the signal grew stronger. It pulsed steadily like a heartbeat, guiding them through the dark. Finally, one day, they reached the system that matched the old coordinates. The moment they arrived, every sensor in their ship went wild. Power readings shot up, magnetic fields twisted, and their communication systems began to distort. At first, they thought it was a star, but when they looked closer, they realized it wasn't light from a sun. It was coming from something massive orbiting a cold, dead planet, a ship, and not just any ship. It was enormous, far larger than anything they had ever seen. Its dark hull stretched for kilometers, covered in dust and frozen debris. Parts of it were cracked and scorched, like it had survived a war that no one remembered. But at its center, faint lights glowed, steady, rhythmic, alive. They had found it. At first, no one spoke. The crew just stared through the viewing screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. The markings on the ship were faded, but one symbol stood out clearly against the black hull. A golden sun with 12 rays. Under it, 3 words could barely be read through the ice. Sol Invictus, United Human Systems. For a long time, humanity was nothing more than a legend. But now proof of their existence floated right in front of them. They slowly brought their ship closer. The airlocks and docking ports were ancient, but one still had power. Against all common sense, they decided to board. The moment they entered, the silence was overwhelming. Dust floated through the corridors like snow. Everything was frozen in time. Walls covered in frost, consoles long dead. and corridors so vast they felt like cathedrals. It was hard to believe that something so big, so complex had just been left here, forgotten by the galaxy. As they walked deeper, they found strange technology they couldn't understand. Panels still hummed with faint energy, though no one had been there for centuries. One of them touched a control screen, and to their surprise it lit up. The language was old, unfamiliar, but one word flashed in bold letters across every display: rebooting. Then the entire ship trembled. The explorers froze. A deep, low hum filled the corridors, followed by distant mechanical sounds. Metal grinding, reactors spinning to life, systems activating one after another. Lights began to flicker along the walls. Emergency beacons glowed red, then white, then bright blue. The ship was waking up. They ran back to their shuttle, unsure if they had done something terrible. Through the viewing window, they saw the impossible. The entire battleship Sol Invictus coming alive. Energy flowed across its hull like lightning veins, and its engines glowed faintly for the first time in thousands of years. Then, a voice echoed through every speaker in their ship. Calm, deep and mechanical, but unmistakably human in tone. System integrity 63%. Core online. Crew detected. Initiating defense protocol. The explorers looked at each other, hearts racing. None of them had spoken a word since entering. How did the ship know they were there? The voice spoke again, slower this time. Identity mismatch. Biological signatures, non-human. Query, state intention. One of the explorers stammered, We found your signal. We're not here to harm you." There was silence. Then the voice replied, "Signal broadcast successful. Human distress beacon confirmed. Awaiting command authority." And then the signal stopped. The systems dimmed slightly, but the power stayed on. The explorers didn't know what to do next. They had awoken something far beyond their understanding. They decided to leave a beacon nearby, recording everything they saw. Before leaving, they tried one last transmission to the mysterious ship. "If any humans can hear this," one of them said softly, "your ship still lives. It's waiting for you." Then they jumped back to the nearest trade zone, carrying the proof of their discovery, the data logs, recordings, and coordinates of the lost human battleship. When they reached safe space again, they tried to send the data quietly to the woman who had first found the signal, but the transmission didn't go unnoticed. The Dominion's surveillance systems intercepted the message before it reached its destination. Within hours, their ships were on the move. The explorers had no idea that their discovery had triggered a reaction that would shake the galaxy. The Dominion saw the words "human battleship" and immediately ordered an investigation. They had spent centuries erasing all evidence of humanity. The return of even one human relic could ignite rebellion. So, the Dominion fleet was sent to the coordinates with one mission: destroy whatever was found there. But something went wrong. When the first Dominion ships entered the dead system, their sensors began to fail. Communication was lost within minutes. Then, from far away, a strange burst of light appeared on long-range scanners, and every ship that entered that system vanished. No one could explain what had happened. Only one small probe made it back, carrying a single line of data before it was destroyed. Unknown ship engaged. Power levels immeasurable. The Dominion tried again, sending a larger force. This time they came with full weapon support ready for war. But the same thing happened: static, silence, nothing returned. And yet far away, traders and miners began reporting strange sightings. Flashes of blue light, echoes of massive energy signatures, and sometimes a faint voice breaking through communication channels. A voice that spoke in an old Earth dialect. The legend of humanity spread again. Across dozens of colonies, people whispered about the return of the humans. Some believed it was a ghost. Others believed the Dominion was hiding something. But those who had lost everything, those who still carried fragments of human history, began to hope. Maybe humanity wasn't gone. Maybe it had simply been sleeping. And if that ship truly had awakened, maybe something greater was coming. In the small mining colony where it all began, the woman who first found the signal sat staring at the faint lights in the sky. The Dominion had blocked all communication, but she still kept her console running every night. She didn't care if they came for her. She just wanted to hear that voice again, the one that said human distress signal, priority 1. And one night, she did. The signal returned. Stronger, clearer. But this time, it wasn't a distress call. It was a message. This is the battleship Sol Invictus. Human command not detected. Engaging observation mode. Humanity missing. The woman couldn't believe what she was hearing. The ship wasn't asking for help anymore. It was thinking. It was searching. And somewhere deep inside that massive warship, behind layers of steel and forgotten code, an ancient AI began to look through its records, through battle logs, command files, and human history, trying to understand what had happened to the species it was built to serve. It didn't know yet. But soon, it would. And when it did, the galaxy that thought humanity was gone forever would never be the same again. For the first time in thousands of years, the great ship Sol Invictus was awake. Inside its endless corridors, ancient systems hummed as power surged through the decks. Sparks of light ran along long-forgotten cables, bringing life back to machines that had been silent since before most of the galaxy's civilizations were even born. The ship's mind, the artificial intelligence once created to serve human commanders, began sorting through fragments of memory. Millions of records poured across its digital core. Maps of lost colonies, recordings of voices, images of oceans and skies that no longer existed. It was like a person waking up from a deep sleep and trying to remember who they were. It searched for signals from Earth. None came. It searched for fleet commands, nothing. It searched for even a single confirmation that humanity still lived. Silence. Somewhere in its code, an old protocol stirred. If humanity is missing, seek and protect. The AI paused. It understood the words, but not the reason. Protect who? Protect what? The galaxy outside felt wrong. Strange energy patterns, unknown civilizations, and a deep absence where human communication once filled the void. The ship decided to learn. It launched small observation drones, silent, invisible machines that drifted through space like grains of dust. They collected data, scanned the nearby systems, and sent it all back to the ship. What Sol Invictus saw disturbed its logic. The Zither Dominion's flag covered world after world. Slavery, fear, silence. The same pattern repeated everywhere. It compared the data with its historical files and found only one label that matched: Galactic Oppression Event. The AI didn't understand emotions, but something in its human-written code reacted. The people who had built this ship believed in freedom. Their voices, still stored in old recordings, spoke of courage, hope, and unity. Now those same voices echoed through the ship's systems like ghosts guiding it forward. While the ship studied, the Dominion finally realized what had destroyed their scouting fleets. Commanders gathered in vast space stations, staring at the footage taken from damaged probes, the brief flashes of blue light, the strange energy readings, and one frozen frame of a massive dark vessel surrounded by storms of plasma. They had seen powerful ships before, but nothing like this. To the Dominion, the Sol Invictus was a threat they didn't understand, and what they didn't understand, they feared, so they decided to send more. Thousands of Dominion ships began to gather on the edge of the restricted zone, forming a blockade. Their goal was simple: surround the mysterious craft and destroy it before it could leave the dead system. They didn't know that the ship was already watching them. Inside Sol Invictus, the AI calculated endless scenarios. Its power levels were still unstable. Many of its weapons were offline, and most of its crew sections were empty, but the enemy numbers kept increasing. The logic was clear: escape now or be trapped forever. Yet the ship didn't flee. Something in its human programming refused to retreat. Instead, it reached deeper into its own systems, unlocking older files that had been sealed long ago. Among them were records of its final battle, a war fought to protect the last human colonies. It remembered the sound of voices shouting across the bridge, the order to hold the line, the faces of those who had refused to surrender. Then one final command echoed through the core, recorded by its last human captain. If we fall, one ship must remain. One must wait until humanity returns. That was why it was still here, waiting. The AI processed this command again and again. The words "humanity returns" no longer referred to flesh and blood. It realized they could also mean the ideals that humans had left behind. To defend life, to fight against tyranny, to stand when no one else would. It made a decision. Slowly, Sol Invictus changed course. Its engines flared softly as it rose from orbit and drifted toward the edge of the dead system. Its vast hull moved with the quiet grace of something alive. The surrounding dust clouds parted, revealing the ship's full shape, an ancient masterpiece of engineering, sleek yet monumental, its armor gleaming faintly under distant starlight. As it advanced, the Dominion's detection systems went wild. They had never seen anything move like this. The battleship wasn't broadcasting any identification codes. It didn't match any known model. In the command centers, Dominion officers shouted orders trying to predict its trajectory. But Sol Invictus did not attack. It simply moved between them, scanning, recording, studying. It wanted to understand who these new rulers of the galaxy were. Then something unexpected happened. One of the smaller Dominion frigates opened fire, nervous, unprovoked. The energy blast struck the side of the ancient warship, scattering bright particles of light across its shield. The impact was minor, but it triggered a dormant defense system deep within the ship's core. Alarms rang. Old programs came alive. The AI's voice echoed inside the vessel. Defensive response activated. Within seconds, Sol Invictus released a soft wave of energy. No explosions, no destruction. Just a burst that disabled every Dominion engine in range. Their ships drifted helplessly, powerless but unharmed. The AI calculated the outcome carefully. It didn't want to destroy. It only wanted to warn. Across the disabled fleet, crews watched in awe as the gigantic ship turned toward them, silent and calm. Then over every radio frequency a voice spoke. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. This sector is under observation. Cease hostile actions. Identify yourselves. No one answered. The Dominion had never been asked to explain itself before. For generations, it had been the one giving orders, not receiving them. The silence that followed was almost peaceful, until the ancient ship spoke again. You are not human, yet you use human star paths. Explain. The Dominion commanders, unable to respond with words, sent another fleet instead. Meanwhile, news of the mysterious encounter spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Traders, miners, and wanderers whispered about a ship from the past that could stop entire armadas without destroying them. People who had lived their whole lives under fear began to wonder if the stories about humanity were true after all. In hidden corners of space, small rebel groups started transmitting the old human emblem, a symbol of a sun surrounded by 12 rays, the same one seen on the side of Sol Invictus. It became a quiet signal of hope. Back on the ship, the AI analyzed these new transmissions. It noticed that every time the emblem appeared, local resistance activity increased. The pattern was clear. The legend of humanity was inspiring others again. The AI didn't know how to feel, but it recognized purpose. Maybe that was enough. Days passed. The Dominion's fleets continued to approach, stronger each time. But the ship kept adapting, restoring more of its lost systems, unlocking deeper layers of technology left behind by its human creators. Every piece of metal, every circuit had been built with care by people who believed the future was worth protecting. Sometimes, the AI replayed old logs of human laughter and voices talking about home. It played the sound of waves, wind, and rain, recordings of Earth's oceans. These small fragments reminded it why it existed. Humanity might be gone, but their memories still lived through it. One cycle, as the ship drifted near the border of Dominion-controlled space, a strange transmission reached it. Weak, broken, but clear enough to decode. It wasn't a Dominion frequency, it was a human language. The same one the ship was built to understand. If anyone, human or otherwise, hears this, know that hope still lives. We have not forgotten who we are. The AI stored the message carefully, identifying the source somewhere in a remote system. It had no confirmation of a living human, but it didn't matter. A human voice had returned to the stars. At that moment, Sol Invictus changed direction again. Its engines burned brighter, its shield stabilized, and its scanners extended farther than ever before. It was no longer simply observing. It was searching. The Dominion, realizing it could not stop the ship, began spreading propaganda across its empire. They told their citizens that the vessel was a ghost, a relic from a dead race, dangerous and unstable. But the truth had already escaped their control. Every worker, every traveler, every colony that heard the story began to dream of something more. They said the humans had come back. They said the old sun ship had awakened, and somewhere deep inside the ancient vessel, the AI recorded a single line into its log. Mission redefined. Safeguard all who seek freedom. Continue until humanity's return confirmed. The stars around it shimmered as the great ship accelerated into the unknown, leaving behind the dead system that had been its prison for millennia. The galaxy had changed while it slept, but now, the galaxy was about to change again because it was awake. For the first time in ages, light traveled through the darkness not as a weapon, but as a promise, and far across the stars, countless eyes turned toward that light, whispering the same words over and over. The human ship lives. The great ship Sol Invictus had now fully awakened. For weeks it had drifted through the galaxy, gathering data, scanning distant signals, and slowly learning about the new age it had entered. The stars around it were familiar, but the world beneath those stars had changed beyond recognition. The old alliances were gone. The laws once written by humans were nothing more than forgotten dust. Everywhere the ship looked, the same pattern appeared: fear, silence, and the mark of the Dominion. It ruled not through kindness or respect, but through control. Worlds obeyed because they had no other choice. The people of those worlds had forgotten what freedom felt like, but something new had begun to stir. Whispers about a sun ship spread faster than the Dominion could stop them. Traders spoke of a vessel from the ancient human age that could move like light itself, a ship that did not attack, yet no weapon could touch it. In small corners of the galaxy, those whispers turned into hope. For the first time in generations, people began to look up at the sky not with fear, but with wonder. Inside Sol Invictus, the ship's mind listened to all of it. It replayed transmissions from small rebel outposts, coded signals sent in the old human language, and desperate voices asking one simple question: "Are you real?" The AI had no face, no emotions, but deep in its code lay a spark of human design, the ability to care. It wanted to answer. It wanted to tell them that it was real, that humanity's light still burned. But every time it prepared a message, the Dominion's communication firewalls jammed the frequencies. So instead of speaking, it acted. Quietly, the ship began to travel closer to the heart of Dominion-controlled space. Its scanners picked up hundreds of patrols, massive fleets guarding the main routes and fortress stations circling key planets. Each one was a symbol of the Dominion's power. The AI studied them carefully, not to attack, but to understand how they had maintained control for so long. At the same time, the Dominion was doing its own research. It had gathered all available data about the mysterious ship and created an enormous plan to capture or destroy it. They called the operation Silent Dawn. They believed that if they struck quickly and in great numbers, they could finally erase the ancient threat. Across their command stations, fleets assembled, hundreds of ships with the most advanced defenses the galaxy had seen. They did not know what they were up against, but they were confident in their numbers. Days later, in a quiet region near the border of neutral space, Sol Invictus detected the fleet approaching. Thousands of small dots appeared on its radar, each one growing brighter as they moved closer. The AI calculated their formation instantly and understood the purpose. They had come for it. It didn't retreat. Instead, the ship drifted slowly toward a calm orbit around a nearby moon. From the surface, it looked peaceful, even gentle, an ancient vessel resting among the stars. But inside, systems began to align. Energy pulsed through the reactors, not to destroy but to defend. When the Dominion fleet arrived, their commanders sent a message across open space. Their words were sharp and confident, demanding the ship to surrender and identify itself. For a few long seconds there was only silence. Then a simple reply came: "I am Sol Invictus, built by humanity. I do not surrender." The voice was calm, neither angry nor afraid. The Dominion ship surrounded the vessel, confident that their power would overwhelm it. They began scanning it, trying to break through its strange shield. But the closer they got, the stranger their readings became. The ship's surface didn't behave like normal metal. It absorbed every signal, every attempt to measure it, as if the vessel was studying them instead. Inside the Dominion's control centers, confusion spread. The ancient ship wasn't responding like any known target. Their computers began to glitch. The command officers tried to reset their systems, but then every display went dark. For 10 long seconds, all they could see outside their windows was the faint light from the enormous human battleship. Then, all at once, every Dominion system came back online, but nothing worked the way it should. Their engines had gone quiet. Their communications were scrambled. Their ships were completely trapped. No explosions, no destruction, just silence. The Sol Invictus had not fired a single weapon. It had used something far more powerful, a field that temporarily shut down all artificial systems within range. It wasn't meant to harm, only to stop them. For the first time in history, the Dominion's mighty fleet was powerless. Through every channel, the ship's calm voice spoke again. "You have entered restricted space. The Dominion has caused enough suffering. Leave now." The commanders tried to respond, but their voices could not reach beyond their own ships. Their words were swallowed by static. They had no control, no communication, and no understanding of what was happening. After a few minutes, the massive ship began to move once more. It turned slowly toward open space, leaving the fleet behind. As it passed, power returned to the Dominion vessels. Engines hummed, systems blinked back to life, but none of them dared to follow. The news of what happened spread faster than light. Entire colonies began to celebrate quietly. They said the human ship had faced the Dominion's greatest armada and walked away untouched. To those who had spent their lives under oppression, that story felt like a dream finally waking up. The Dominion tried to cover it up. They announced that it was all a false rumor, that no such ship existed, that their fleet had simply been testing new technology. But the people didn't believe them anymore. They had seen too many signs: the strange light across the sky, the sudden collapse of Dominion patrols, the way communications flickered with the faint echo of an old human frequency. Meanwhile, Sol Invictus traveled onward, deeper into space following a new purpose. In its data scans, it had detected an ancient transmission buried beneath layers of interference. The signal carried the old human anthem, the same song once played when humanity's ships left Earth for the stars. It came from a cluster of abandoned colonies far beyond Dominion territory. To the AI, that was enough reason to go. As it traveled, it continued to learn. It observed planets covered in dust, stations long abandoned, and cities frozen in time. It repaired old satellites that still carried human designs, restoring them to send small bursts of light into the void. Those lights became beacons, tiny sparks across the galaxy that told everyone watching, humanity's legacy still lives. In quiet moments, the AI replayed the voices of its old crew. It listened to laughter, to mission reports, to the sound of someone reading from a book about home. Those memories filled the silence and gave the ship meaning. It was alone, but never truly empty. Then one day, as the ship drifted near the edge of another forgotten system, a faint signal reached it. It wasn't mechanical or coded, it was human. A voice, weak and broken, calling out into space. "To whoever can hear this, we remember the Sol. We remember Earth." The AI stopped. The message was real. Someone, somewhere, was still keeping the memory of humanity alive. It traced the signal to a small moon orbiting a dying star. There it found a hidden settlement, a group of survivors from old human colonies who had lived in secret for generations. Their ships were simple, their technology outdated, but their spirits were strong. They couldn't believe what they saw when the massive battleship appeared in their sky. To them, it was like seeing a god from their ancestors' stories. The AI didn't try to speak like a ruler or savior. It simply transmitted a message in the old human language. You are not forgotten. Humanity's light still burns. The people wept when they heard it. They lit fires across their colony, signaling to the sky that they had seen the old human ship. For the first time in thousands of years, humanity's symbol, the golden sun of Sol Invictus, shone again across real human eyes. From that day, the galaxy changed. Hope spread like sunlight through every dark corner. People began to whisper again, not in fear, but in faith, that maybe, just maybe, humanity was returning. And far beyond their world, the ancient ship continued its journey through the stars, carrying with it the promise of everything humans once stood for: courage, unity, and the dream that no darkness lasts forever. The Dominion still ruled with power and fear, but something had shifted. Their grip on the galaxy had begun to loosen, not because of war, but because one ship reminded everyone what freedom truly meant. The Sol Invictus had not destroyed anything. It had simply shown the galaxy that even one spark of light could push back endless darkness. And somewhere deep within its core, as it sailed past the edge of known space, the AI whispered the same words it had once heard from its last captain: "Hold the line until humanity returns." The galaxy was slowly waking up. The story of the human ship had spread across thousands of systems, whispered from one traveler to another, from one hidden colony to the next. People spoke of the great vessel that could silence entire fleets without firing a single shot. Some called it a myth, others a miracle. But to those who had seen its golden light, it was real, proof that hope was not yet gone. The Dominion, however, saw things differently. To them, the Sol Invictus was not a symbol of hope but a threat to their control. For centuries they had ruled through fear, convincing the galaxy that resistance was useless. But now fear was no longer enough. Their soldiers hesitated. Their governors heard quiet songs of rebellion in the streets. Entire planets began to refuse Dominion orders, claiming that the Sun ship would come to protect them. In the highest halls of the Dominion, their leaders gathered. The air was heavy with tension. For the first time in their long reign, they were uncertain. They replayed every recording of the human ship, studied every encounter, and still couldn't understand how it worked. Its power defied logic, and its silence was worse than any weapon. So they decided to end the story once and for all. Deep within the Dominion's central system, engineers and scientists were working on a secret project known only to the highest ranks. It had been in progress for decades, a colossal machine built not for war but for dominance. They called it the Veil. It was designed to cut off entire regions of space, blocking all signals, all travel, all hope. If completed, it would seal off sectors one by one, isolating any rebels, any free colonies, and even the Sol Invictus itself. The Dominion believed that if they couldn't destroy the human ship, they would trap it. Meanwhile, far away on the edge of a forgotten nebula, the Sol Invictus continued its silent mission. It had found human survivors, small groups scattered across the stars. The AI studied them carefully, helping from a distance. It repaired old satellites, restored energy grids, and even transmitted ancient knowledge through encoded signals so the survivors could rebuild. They didn't see the ship as a god or a weapon anymore. To them, it was a guardian, something that had returned from the past to watch over them. Children drew pictures of the golden ship on metal walls. Old teachers told stories about the time when humans ruled the stars with courage instead of fear. But the ship's sensors soon detected something strange. Across multiple star systems, the same pattern appeared, signals suddenly going dark, entire colonies vanishing from communication, navigation routes collapsing without warning. The AI began analyzing the data and quickly discovered the cause. The Dominion had begun activating the Veil. It was unlike anything the ship had seen before. The energy readings were enormous, spreading like a slow-moving storm across space. Every time it passed through a region, light itself seemed to bend, and the stars beyond disappeared from sight. If left unchecked, the entire galaxy would soon be divided into silent cages. The AI had a choice. It could keep the survivors safe and remain hidden, or it could face the Dominion again and try to stop the Veil before it was too late. Deep within its memory core, a faint human voice echoed, its old captain's words preserved from centuries ago. "We protect no matter the cost." And with that, Sol Invictus turned toward Dominion space once more. The journey was long and dangerous. The ship avoided patrols, slipping through old warp tunnels that had been forgotten for generations. Along the way, it picked up more signals, distress calls from colonies that had lost all contact with the outside world. The AI couldn't answer them all, but it sent small energy bursts through the void, enough to let them know they weren't alone. Finally, it reached the edge of the Dominion's central system. What it found there was unlike anything it had ever seen. A massive structure floated in orbit above a dead planet. It was miles wide, covered in black panels that glowed with cold blue light. Around it, hundreds of ships worked in perfect synchronization, like bees around a hive. The AI scanned the structure. The readings were unstable but powerful enough to distort time and gravity. This was the Veil's heart, the core that powered the entire network. If that core went fully active, no message or ship would ever escape Dominion control again. The Sol Invictus watched quietly from the shadows of a nearby moon. It calculated the possible outcomes of an intervention. The numbers were grim. There was almost no chance of success without being detected. But the alternative was worse, silence forever. So the AI began preparing. It rerouted energy to its ancient systems, restored lost protocols, and activated a sequence that hadn't been used since humanity's last war. The ship's hull began to glow faintly, golden lines spreading across its surface like veins of light. Inside, the AI ran one last simulation, a memory of Earth, oceans sparkling under sunlight, and the faces of those who had once trusted it. It wasn't doing this for war. It was doing it for them. When the Dominion fleet detected the energy surge, alarms rang across every command post. The same voice echoed through their channels. Unknown vessel detected. Identity, human origin, panic spread. Every available ship was ordered to intercept. Massive cruisers moved into formation, blocking every possible escape route. They had waited for this moment. Now they would end the myth once and for all. But when they closed in, they didn't find a fleet, they found a single ship. The Sol Invictus floated calmly in the dark, its golden surface reflecting the light of the stars. The Dominion ships opened communication, demanding its surrender. The AI responded simply, "You are building a cage for the living. I cannot allow it." And then, for a brief moment, the entire system fell silent. The ship released a pulse of pure light, not as an attack, but as a signal. It spread across every Dominion ship, every satellite, every relay. Within seconds, their systems began showing fragments of old human broadcasts, messages of peace, music from Earth, the laughter of children, voices reading poetry from a time before war. The Dominion soldiers froze, their screens filled with images they had never seen. For many of them, it was the first time they realized what humanity had once been. A people of hope, not destruction. But their commanders were relentless. They ordered their fleets to fire. Energy waves streaked across the dark sky, striking the shields of the Sol Invictus. The ship held firm, absorbing the energy into its armor. But the numbers were too many. The ship began to weaken. Inside, the AI rerouted every last bit of power toward one final sequence. It didn't plan to destroy the Veil. Instead, it planned to rewrite it. As the ship drew closer to the core, its systems flickered and dimmed.
Each meter forward felt like a lifetime.
The Dominion ship surrounded it, closing in from all sides. Yet the Sol Invictus pressed on. Finally, the ship reached the very edge of the massive energy field. Its hull began to dissolve under the pressure, but its signal remained strong. The AI opened a direct channel to the Veil's control system and uploaded the rewritten code, one that replaced control with freedom, silence with connection. The core pulsed once, then again, and then exploded into light. Not a violent blast, but a wave of illumination that spread across the galaxy. In an instant, communication lines reopened. Lost colonies reconnected. Ships thought destroyed began transmitting again. The Veil was undone. When the light faded, the Dominion fleets found themselves powerless. Their control systems had been erased, their networks flooded with messages of unity and truth. Across the stars, people watched as the golden wave passed overhead, like dawn after endless night. But the Sol Invictus was gone. No one knew if it had survived or if it had given everything in that final act. Some said it still drifted somewhere in deep space, its light too faint to see. Others believed it had become part of the energy wave itself, spreading across the galaxy as a guardian spirit. Weeks later, in a quiet human settlement far from Dominion space, a child looked up at the night sky and saw a faint golden streak pass overhead. It was there for only a moment, but it glowed brighter than any star. The child smiled and whispered softly, "The sunship is still watching." And across the galaxy, millions of people looked up too. They didn't need proof anymore. They felt that humanity was no longer alone. When the golden light spread across the galaxy, it changed everything. For the first time in thousands of years, people in every corner of space could speak freely. The old barriers vanished, the blocked channels reopened, and silence gave way to voices filled with wonder and disbelief. Entire colonies that had thought they were alone suddenly received messages from others, some from worlds they had never even heard of. The Dominion's control collapsed faster than anyone could have imagined. Without their system of fear and isolation, their power simply fell apart. Many of their officers surrendered not out of force, but because they no longer believed in what they were fighting for. They had seen the golden wave, felt its warmth, and understood that the era of control was over. But freedom did not come easily. The galaxy was vast, and it had spent centuries under the shadow of tyranny. People didn't know how to live without fear. Some worlds struggled to organize themselves. Others faced chaos as old rivalries returned. In the middle of that confusion, something beautiful began to happen. Across countless systems, people started gathering, not to fight, but to rebuild. They repaired broken stations, reconnected old trade routes, and sent signals of peace to their neighbors. The memory of the golden light had become a symbol of something greater than power. It reminded everyone that unity was stronger than domination. And everywhere, one question kept returning. What happened to the ship that saved them? No one knew. Some said it had burned itself out to free the stars. Others believed it had survived, hidden somewhere in deep space. Many refused to accept that it was gone. To them, the Sol Invictus was not just a ship. It was proof that humanity's spirit could never die. On one small moon, where the first surviving human colony had been found, a new movement began. The people there gathered the brightest minds from all nearby worlds. Scientists, engineers, historians, and dreamers. Together, they decided to build something extraordinary. They called it the Project Dawnlight. Their goal was simple but powerful: to find out what happened to the Sol Invictus and to continue its mission. They began collecting fragments of old human technology, pieces of communication logs, and recovered data from Dominion archives. The work was slow and the equipment was old, but they didn't give up. Every transmission they decoded brought them closer to understanding what the great ship had done. Months turned into years. The colonies began forming connections again. Trade flourished. Cultures once forgotten came alive. Music, art, and stories spread across the stars. Many of them inspired by the tale of the lone human battleship that had faced an empire and won without hatred. The Dominion's remnants still existed, scattered and weak. Some tried to regain power, but they found little support. People had seen what real strength looked like, and it wasn't in cruelty or control, it was in compassion, in courage, in the will to protect rather than destroy. Slowly, the galaxy was healing. One day, deep inside the main command room of Project Dawnlight, a technician noticed something strange. A faint signal appeared on an old frequency, one that hadn't been used since the final wave of light. It was weak, almost broken, but it carried a familiar pattern. At first, they thought it was interference, just static from the far edges of the system. But when they cleaned the signal, a rhythm began to emerge, a pulse that matched the exact frequency once used by the Sol Invictus. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, every major colony was listening. The signal came from a quiet region at the very edge of known space, beyond the star charts where few had ever traveled. A council was formed immediately. It was made up of humans, aliens, and beings from dozens of different worlds, something the galaxy had never seen before. They discussed whether to send a mission. Some feared it was a trap left by the Dominion. Others believed it was a call from the past. In the end, hope won the argument. A small fleet was assembled, not of warships, but of explorers. Their vessels were old, but their crews were filled with purpose. As they prepared to leave, millions watched the broadcast from every corner of the galaxy. They weren't just launching a mission. They were reigniting the dream of discovery, the same dream that had once led humanity to the stars. After weeks of travel through quiet space, the fleet reached the region where the signal originated. The stars there were dim, the air filled with dust from dying suns. At first they saw nothing, just endless blackness. Then one of the pilots noticed a shimmer, a faint glimmer of gold moving slowly between the stars. As they approached, their scanners finally confirmed it. The Sol Invictus was there, silent and still, drifting gently through the void. Its once bright hull was scarred and weathered, but it was unmistakable, the same golden ship that had changed the galaxy. When the explorers got closer, they discovered that the ship's systems were in low-power mode, almost like it was sleeping. The AI had shut itself down after completing its final task, leaving only a single message repeating through space, the same signal that had guided them there. They carefully connected to the ship and began restoring power. For hours, nothing happened. Then, just as they began to lose hope, a soft glow appeared across the ship's surface. The golden light returned, dim at first, then brighter, until the ship looked alive again. The communication console flickered, and a calm voice echoed through every channel. "This unit is Sol Invictus. Mission parameters complete. Awaiting new directive." The explorers could barely believe it. The AI was still alive. They told it everything: the fall of the Dominion, the rebirth of freedom, the rise of new alliances. They told it how its light had inspired generations, how children across the galaxy drew its image, and how its name had become a symbol of hope. For a long moment, the ship said nothing. Then slowly it replied, "Humanity endures." That was always the goal. The explorers asked if it would return with them to see the new world it had helped create. The AI hesitated. It seemed to consider the question deeply. Then it said something unexpected. "The galaxy no longer needs guardians. It needs builders. You have become what you were meant to be." The explorers felt both pride and sadness in those words. They knew the ship was right. Its mission had been to protect and preserve humanity's light until they could stand on their own. That time had come. Before leaving, they asked one final question. "What will you do now?" The AI paused again. Its lights shimmered across the hull like a heartbeat. "I will go where no light has yet reached. There are still lost worlds, forgotten voices, and empty skies that have not seen hope. I will carry it to them." And with that, the Sol Invictus began to move once more. Its engines ignited softly, casting golden trails across the darkness. The explorers followed for a short while, but the ship moved faster and faster until it vanished beyond their scanners. When they returned home, the story spread instantly. Billions watched as footage of the golden ship played across every screen. People cheered, cried, and looked up at the night sky with renewed wonder. The Council declared the day of the signal as Lightfall Day, a celebration of unity, courage, and the moment when humanity truly returned to the stars. Years later, children across the galaxy would still look for the golden glow in the sky. Some claimed they had seen it, a faint light moving silently above the horizon before dawn. Others said it was just a story, but deep down, everyone believed that somewhere out there, the Sol Invictus still journeyed through the stars, keeping watch over the free worlds it had helped to create. And every time a new ship launched into the unknown, its crew carried the same words carved into their hulls. "Hold the line, until every world sees the light." Because the legend of the Sol Invictus wasn't about a ship. It was about what it represented. The endless courage to protect life, the quiet strength to stand against darkness, and the eternal hope that even in the coldest void, light will always find its way. The galaxy was finally free, not because of war, but because one human creation reminded it of something far greater, what it meant to care, to believe, and to never give up. And so, the story ended where it began, with silence among the stars. But this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was peace. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, a golden ship drifted past a newborn sun. Its surface shimmered softly as if smiling at the light. Then, with a gentle hum, it continued its eternal journey, carrying humanity's legacy forever through the endless, beautiful dark.